think everybody's coming online. When you start hearing me, go ahead and put a comment in the chat so I can see that you're here. Let's see. I'm just going to do a little playing while we're waiting for folks to come on. Hey, Colleen. Good to see you. Colin and Harriet, good to see you here tonight. Who else is here? I might have missed a few people. Let's see. No, it looks like we got a few. We got 4 comments online and showed up. 10 people on. Hey, Nyla, good to see ya. Well, all right. Tell you what. There it is. How's that for a beginning? A nice slow start to our time together. So I want to just I'm from the spare bedroom at Amy and my's place here in Sioux Falls. This was we had some house guests over the weekend, and so I just got the spare bedroom. The air mattress taken down, and wanted to share with you now that I kind of have this place set up a little bit. This is one of my favorite guitars. It has a lovely story to it that I'll share another time maybe. But this is a Gibson RD Artist, and if Bob Falcho is watching, or if he catches this later, then Bob one of these days we'll swap guitar stories. So let me see here. I'm going to go ahead and mute that and put this aside for a moment. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you tonight. A lovely Tuesday evening to you. Boy, that heat's come back just a little bit, hasn't it? Hey, all right. We got Irene and Karen Slocum. Good to see you here. So I don't know what to call this night of Together in Faith. I just kind of, I think we're calling it this. I think we're calling it human faith. And I want to spend a little bit of time thinking about our fall, what we're doing together in faith this fall, and a little bit of time with the epistle reading for this next Sunday in our church season. And so those are basically the two kind of things that I wanted to chat about. But while you're online, and hey, Carol, thanks. I'm glad you like the guitar. I wanted to ask about what is kind of most impactful about your faith. And I think I was kind of ruminating on this today, about relationship, about faith. last week we talked about, in the scripture, we had this whole Jesus abiding with us and Jesus, Jesus in us, through bread and wine, through body and blood. That was in our John reading, the culmination of 5 weeks of reading the 6th chapter of John. And I am thinking about that and what's for me this next week, because I'm going to be gone next week because I'm going to be taking some vacation days, because it'll be the 20th anniversary for Amy and I, 20 years of marriage. And I was thinking about how when we started dating, we were dating long distance, so we never lived in the same city. For all of the time that we were dating or engaged. For all that time, I lived in Minneapolis and Amy lived in Cleveland, Ohio. And so one of the things that we started doing was we did a couple different things to kind of mitigate that. And this was in the year 2000, way long ago. And so we, at the time, I don't think I had a cell phone. I don't think Amy had a cell phone either. And so we would exchange journals when we would see each other. We would write in each other's journals, and we would do long distance calling cards, if those of you remember those days. And then we also started reading each other's books, books that one of us had read, the other hadn't, or we just wanted to have an experience together. And hey, thanks, Paul. Hey, Paul Davis from last week is on, so good to see you here, Paul. And so we started kind of exchanging each other's books and kind of thinking about some of that. And so I've been thinking about, well, this maybe is a good model to get to know, everyone in this new faith community that I get to be a part of at Eastside Lutheran. What if we were to, read a book together? Worked 20 years ago, led to marriage for Amy and I. So, let's think about that. And so I was, now, of course, my books are kind of strewn between this home library behind me, my library at my office, and of course Amy's library at her office at Brandon Lutheran. But I just kind of assembled a few books here that were from here in my house at this library to think about what books we might read. And so what I'm curious about for this kind of human faith discussion is what kind of books have been influential in your lives? If you were to think about a book that you wanted to read together as a community, maybe put that suggestion in the chat. And while you're thinking about that, I'm gonna maybe pull out a few books and think about. Hi, Reen. Good to see you this evening. I want to kind of pull out a few books and think about whether or not if I pull out this title and you're like, oh, that would be a lovely book to read, let me know in the chat. Or just send me an email, joel@eastsidlc.org. So the first one that I pulled out, which I thought would be a really interesting book to read, is this one, Martin Luther, A Life, by Martin Marty, Martin Marty is kind of the preeminent kind of Lutheran scholar in North America. And it's a, as you can tell, it's not a very big book. It's a pretty easy read. Even in the small size, it's under 200 pages, just under 200 pages. And I think it's a really lovely little read. So if you haven't kind of spent some time reading about Martin Luther and his history, this is a great way. So even if we don't read it as a community, might be something you might want to pick up. A Life, Martin Luther, A Life by Martin Marty. This was published about 15 years ago. I was just thinking if I could find an excerpt that I thought would be interesting. Let's see here. Okay, well, see, I underline a lot in my books, and so this one, interestingly enough, looks like it's a comment on marriage. So here's what I underlined at some point in time. He thought marriage would distract him personally from fulfilling his mission. This is, I think, talking about Martin Luther. Gradually, he overcame his reluctance to take the step towards marriage. Thus, on May 4th, in the same letter in which he urged a member of the town council to resist the warring peasants, he calmly announced that, to spite the devil, he might marry Catherine von Bora. All right, there it is. So there's one suggestion. If you think that would be a good suggestion, a good book that we read together, well, then just let me know. So one of the things, like I said, I wanted to read through the epistle for this next week, because I think it's a really human take on faith. And speaking of Martin Luther, he was not a fan of James. The book of James is one of those books that he really wanted to actually remove from the Bible. He called it, I think, the Epistle of Straw, and so he wasn't a fan. But I have to admit, I'm kind of a fan of this reading that we have this upcoming Sunday. So if you happen to have your Bible out, you can go ahead and find it in your own Bible, James chapter 1, and it's 10 verses of James that I'm just going to read now, and look for a little thoughts here in the chat. Hey, Lane. Lane's online. Let's see. All right. So let me just go ahead and read this Epistle of Straw from the Apostle James. All right, here we go. Every generous act of giving, with every perfect gift, is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. In fulfillment of his own purpose, he gave us birth by the word of truth, so that we would become a kind of first fruits of his creatures. You must understand this, my beloved. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, for your anger does not produce God's righteousness. Therefore rid yourselves of all sordidness and rank growth of wickedness, and become with meekness the implanted word that has the power to save your souls. But be doers of the word, and not merely hearers, who deceive themselves. For if any are hearers of the word and not doers, they are like those who look at themselves in a mirror. For they look at themselves, and on going away immediately forget what they were like. But those who look into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and persevere, being not hearers who forget, but doers who act, they will be blessed in their doing. If any think they are religious, and do not bridle their tongues, but deceive their hearts, their religion is worthless. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God, the Father, is this: to care for orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. So that is a reading from James. And, well, there were two things that were... let me just ask this. Hi, Jenny. Good to see you here tonight. Hey, Bob. Oh, yes, that is a Reverend amplifier in back of me. Good eye. Bob, you'll have to scroll back. I was playing guitar at the very beginning. But maybe I'll tell you a little bit of story about that later. But that is an amplifier that's no longer made by a company called Reverend. They make guitars also. Okay, so here's the thing that was really interesting to me in this reading. Your anger does not produce God's righteousness. How true is that in our world today, that people are angry about this or that thing and almost act as if their anger might produce God's righteousness? It just seems like a word kind of tailor fit for today. Our anger does not produce God's righteousness. What a good thing to remember. And then the other piece, of course, that ending, which is just really lovely. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God, the Father, is this: to care for orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. Now, that last part, that unstained by the world, is, well, it just, it could fill a lot of things. And so then thinking about another book that might be good to read as we kind of spend time together and get to know one another, in a maybe not so dissimilar way to how Amy and I got to know each other at a distance as we were dating and engaged from a distance. It couldn't have been all wrong, right, or all bad, because it led to 20 years so far of marriage. So I'm thinking this is maybe going to become my new default small catechism. This is Luther's Small Catechism with African descent reflections from some of our Black Lutheran clergy colleagues. And so I was thinking about the seventh petition of the Lord's Prayer, which is "Deliver us from evil," and this reading from James around keeping oneself unstained from the world. And so I thought this reflection in this small catechism on the seventh petition was really lovely. I wanted to read it to you to see if it might entice you to maybe use this as start to become your default small catechism. Evil is the abuse of power. Evil causes individuals harm and injury. Evil creates socioeconomic, ideological, and institutional chaos and denigrates sacred bodies and spirits in community. Evil is an external object that cannot act on its own, but must be employed by human or spiritual agents. In other words, individuals are neither good nor bad, evil, but they can act in evil ways. Remember that what God created was and is good. So evil is what a person does rather than what a person is. Evil exists when people forget what the African proverb asserts: I am because we are, and we are because I am. And it goes on from there. It's a lovely little piece, and that might be a lovely way to get to know one another, to spend some time in this fall. So if you are thinking that might be of interest, let me know either in the chat or send me an email. Let's see. I was thinking about books that were really influential for me. This author, Brennan Manning, whose his most well-known book is a book called The Ragamuffin Gospel. That happens to be at the church office right now. So I pulled up this one of his, which is another one that I really enjoyed when I was in my early 20s, Ruthless Trust. And let's see, when did this book come out? Brennan Manning has since passed away. This was published in 2000, so right when Amy and I were dating. And this also speaks a little bit to evil, this quote, as I was paging through. Again, this was one of those things where I highlighted in the margins, and so let me just read a bit of, I think this is from a chapter called Thinking Big. Let's see. Something is afoot in the universe. Someone filled with transcendent brightness, wisdom, ingenuity, and power and goodness is about. Or the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary, somewhere deep down a voice whispers, all is well, and all will be well. The late Karl Rahner insisted, in the days ahead, you will be a mystic, one who has experienced God, or nothing at all. If Christianity is merely an ethic, a moral code, or a philosophy of life, it will not withstand the incursion of suffering. The graced experience of the divine is not something esoteric reserved for an elite few. When Thomas Merton was asked who might receive this gift, he replied, the answer is obvious. Everybody. So, maybe another book to consider for a group read this fall. Ruthless Trust by Brennan Manning. Well, let's see here. No comments yet, but I would love to hear maybe some of your books that have kind of been part of your human faith journey. I'd just love to see what kind of things are important to you in this. Let's see. I'm going to keep on pulling out a few more books to ask your thoughts on, and you could also say, you won't offend me if you're like, oh, please don't ever read that book, or oh no, not that. I only need space fantasy books. So, excuse me. So, this was a book that was published in the last couple of years, and actually led a congregational study on it. Actually, my wife Amy led a congregational study on this. This is Jim Wallace's America's Original Sin, and it's a book on racism. Let me see if I can find what I was thinking of reading here. Oh, it's about powers and principalities, which we had a little bit of that in some of our readings of Ephesians over this last month. He's writing about Stringfellow, who is a Christian lawyer and who published a book in the 60s called My People is the Enemy. For Stringfellow, the problem of racism is not just economic and political, it was theological. Using language from the New Testament, he referred to racism as a principality or a power. As a white Christian living in Harlem, he once said, "To no principality have American churches been more notoriously and scandalously and complacently accommodating than to the principality of racism." Speaking at the first National Conference on Religion and Race in 1963, Stringfellow called racism a demonic power, and to the astonishment of the ecumenical and interfaith audience, linked the problem to a bad theology of baptism. That's why I underline this. Such a really interesting connection here, because as Lutherans, we really hold baptism to be very high. We have a high view of baptism. In his first major meeting of mainline religion on race, the lawyer-theologian Stringfellow said, "Racism is the power with which Jesus Christ was confronted and which, at great and sufficient cost, he overcame. In other words, the issue here is not equality among human beings, but unity among human beings. The issue is baptism. The issue is the unity of all humanity wrought by God in the life and work of Christ. Baptism is the sacrament of that unity." Really a great book, and so if you think that might be something you'd like to read together as a community, would of course love to do that as well. Let's see here. I have just a couple more books, and we've only got a couple more minutes, so I want to lift up two books that I haven't read yet. So for the drive for our time when Amy and I go away for our anniversary, I'm thinking of reading The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker. And I'm just really intrigued, as some friends have been saying a lot of good things about this book, The Art of Gathering, and so this might be my read next week. So I don't have anything to quote from it, but it's the subtitle is How We Meet and Why It Matters. And so if you think that might be an interesting book to read together as a community, well, I'll let you know in another week. And then this was a book that my wife Amy read for a class that she took and I did not, written by a Lutheran pastor, Dennis Jacobson, and it is called Doing Justice. And he's a pastor or at least was, I don't know when this was published, but published by Augsburg Fortress, pastor of Incarnation Lutheran Church in Milwaukee. And I think, this is 2001. So another one of those books I haven't read, but could be a really good read for us to do together in faith, human faith. So, let's see here. Ooh, The Art of Gathering sounds interesting. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah, thanks for that comment. Well, I'll look forward to kind of hearing your thoughts and comments. You can always send me a book suggestion or a thought on both the chat here, but also, of course, in email. Shoot me an email, Joel at eastsidellc.org. And I'm going to be away next week, but you'll get to enjoy Together in Faith with Pastor Lane. And yeah, I know, right? Doing justice sounds good too. I agree. Yeah. Well, thanks for those comments. So before we close out, I think I'm going to kind of pull up the guitar again and maybe do a little playing out. So if Bob is still on, Bob, this is my Gibson. This is a 68, so it was made when I was, oh no, I'm sorry, not a 68, it's a 78. It was made when I was 4 years old. And it's a lovely, lovely little guitar here. And I might just play it along as we do our closing. Thanks for joining in our time today. Thanks for being a part of this time and making this part of your spiritual practice, of your human faith, to gather online in this way. And of course, we have lots of things to pray for. I'll maybe do a little playing, and we can just allow that time to be the prayers that you want to lift up, but especially prayers for those who are sick in our nation now and in this world, for those who are suffering in this world, and well, for all the cares that you care to lift up. I'll do a little playing, and then we will end together with Luther's evening prayer. Let's see here. Thanks to you, my Heavenly Father, through Jesus Christ, your dear Son, that you have graciously protected me today. And I ask you to forgive me all my sins, where I have done wrong, and graciously to protect me tonight. For into your hands I commend myself, my body, my soul, and all that is mine. Let your holy angel be with me, so that the wicked foe may have no power over me. Amen. Well, it's been great to have this time with you. Looking forward to the next time and seeing you on Sunday at Eastside, either online or in worship. Remember, we have outdoor worship at 10 o'clock. So if you like the air conditioning, come for 8 o'clock. And if you like to sit outside, bring a lawn chair. We'll have plenty of cool water and fans to hand out. And 10 o'clock outdoor worship this Sunday. God bless everyone. Have a good night.